I welcome you all, basketball degenerates, to another episode of the Pass First, Shoot Later podcast brought to you by the OC Basketball League. I'm your host, Zico Pepic, here with my co-hosts, Michael Van Wyck and Omar Almadine. How you guys doing tonight?
What's going on, fellas? What's going on, everybody?
Doing good, guys. Another wonderful night.
Another wonderful night with a lot to talk about. It has been an extremely eventful free agency period in the NBA. So, we're all giddy about that.
It's only been what, 2-3 days already?
Yeah, since Sunday night. So,
Yeah.
yeah, honestly, I think we should just get right into it. I think there's a lot to talk about. And I want to start it off with instead of an NBA signing, actually an NBA trade that kind of kicked everything off to get this stuff going. The New York Knicks made a monster trade, traded for Mikal Bridges. We talked about this in the last podcast. They made the Nova Knicks, right, Omar? You want to talk about the Nova Knicks?
Definitely the Nova Knicks.
Right. And this had a lot of ramifications moving into free agency. And I think it's an important topic to go over. The Knicks have some elite perimeter defense now. You've got OG Anunoby, you got Mikal Bridges, you got Josh Hart, you got Dante DiVincenzo. They're going to be a nightmare for teams on the perimeter. And they still have Mitchell Robinson on the team. So what do you guys think of what the Knicks did?
I think the Knicks did a lot of stuff that overall helps them a little bit. Still don't know if it's getting them over the top. I mean, we talked about it. We've gone back and forth on the East. I think we all agreed the top four teams last season, Celtics, 76ers, Knicks, and the Bucks, even though the Bucks probably weren't in that upper tier yet. You thought Miami could compete with Boston, but not necessarily the other teams just because of matchups. I think what the Knicks did helps them. It helps, gives them a little depth, but the loss of Hartenstein, I think, is going to be bigger than people think it is, just up front. But as far as overall depth, overall talent, I think they're good. I think they've cemented themselves as still one of the top three contenders in the East. But another East team made a pretty big move, right? So
Right. So I want to go over this because the reason I started with this is not so much because of the trade. We did talk about this trade last week in the episode, but the ramifications of the trade. The Knicks did lose Isaiah Hartenstein, who signed a massive contract to go play with the OKC Thunder. Can't really blame him when he's making more money now than Jalen Brunson is per year. It's a 3-year contract, but congrats to him. He definitely got a bag there. I definitely think that this is going to hurt the Knicks in terms of losing a very viable and reliable big man. However, sometimes a certain player's value can be over exaggerated. No offense to Hartenstein. I actually love Hartenstein. His value was more determined based off of chemistry than it was actual skill sets. He wasn't a rim runner. He wasn't an elite shot blocker. He was a very good positional defender for the team. And he basically fed off of the attention that Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle were drawing and made the most of it. When playoffs came, and one matchup in particular that is a critical matchup against Joel Embiid, Hartenstein did not play well. He struggled, honestly. If you go back and look at those matchups, he was not able to stick with Embiid in any manner. And when Mitchell Robinson came in, Mitchell Robinson actually held Embiid in check probably better than anyone I've seen all season long, other than Jokic. Gobert can't hold a candle to Embiid. Mitchell Robinson can guard Embiid one-on-one. I know you love that comment, right, Mike? Yeah, I know you love that comment. So the value of Mitchell Robinson at $14 million versus Hartenstein at, he got $29 million a year. I think the Knicks probably would have had to pay him like 20 million, 22 million a year to keep him there. It's overvalued at that price tag. And there are a lot of options that I feel like the Knicks could go in terms of signing or trading for a more feasible contract to replace what Hartenstein did in the same manner. So I really liked Hartenstein in terms of chemistry, but I'm okay with letting him go as long as you replace him with something that'll fit the similar capabilities of what he did. And looking at some of the names that they're looking at, one name in particular is really jumping out at me, and it's Walker Kessler out of the Utah Jazz. Danny Ainge is open to trading him. He wants picks. The Knicks happen to have a ton of picks, even with giving 5 away to the Brooklyn Nets. So Walker Kessler would be phenomenal for the Knicks to trade for if they can. So I don't know if Danny Ainge will trade to the Knicks, but what do you guys think of that?
Before we jump into that in detail, I just want to say that OKC's been making some good moves. So we'll have to definitely talk about them when we get to the West. But we can dive into these trade rumors and who's available for trade and what's going to trade. But I think we got enough stuff to talk about already with what's actually happened.
True.
But with that said, yeah, I mean, anytime you can replace somebody that fits in seamlessly, that can do kind of the same things and get you, you get better players in a different position, and then you can replace them with somebody who's less money to play the position of the guy you lost while still upgrading other positions. Then yeah, it's a win-win. But trading picks to go all in now, I think that's something the Knicks will have to do if they feel like this is the team to do it. Obviously the Nova Knicks have chemistry, right? They all like each other. You've already seen them off the court. They're friends. They hang out. They do things. They've known each other on the court. They play well together. They already know how each other plays. They have
Best podcast outside of ours. Best
Yeah.
podcast on YouTube outside of ours, hands down.
So see, they already got that going. Hopefully that's not a distraction when the season comes. As you know, JJ Redick, that would be a distraction for him. So no podcast for him. But these Nova Knicks, I mean, if they get going and they have the right pieces and they have that depth and they have that chemistry, I think they have a really good coach who gets a lot of criticism for running players ragged, but now he has a whole bench to run ragged. A lot of Iron Men type players. So I think they have a really good situation. Can they stay healthy? Will that translate into, getting out of the East, getting over the Celtics, who seem to have endless money to re-sign everybody in the world? I don't know, but they do have a really good team right now. I still think they're better than the 76ers.
Well, what's interesting tonight is, Mike, you have a lot to say today about the Knicks here. You haven't had a chance to allow me and Zico actually chime in at all. You keep going and adding more and more points, which I'm a little impressed here. Let's start by saying that, but before you start talking about, anything else, I like to take the time here to talk about the Nova Knicks, since I gave them that nickname here. But, yes, they have the deep bench that you mentioned. But again, they're still missing that defensive anchor, which I'm going to ask you, Mike, since you're in the mood of kind of sharing your opinion here. Is Rudy Gobert the X factor for that team if they can make a trade for him?
No, okay. So honest opinion. Let's say they go get Rudy Gobert. They're going to have a tremendous regular season. They'll be the number 1 seed. They'll get there and then they'll fall short because Rudy Gobert teams don't do well in the playoffs. That's how it is. It doesn't matter who else is on the team. You saw Minnesota had a phenomenal defense that was unraveled by 2 guards. And granted, they're fantastic, great, eventual Hall of Fame guards. But
eventual Hall of Fame guards, right? But again, you're talking about a team that we know that has a lot of chemistry, like Zico mentioned. We're talking about also guys team that plays defense, right? Yes, Minnesota plays defense, but you're talking about these guys came from a structure where they all had to play defense. Thibodeau is a defensive minded coach, right? And here you're adding this anchor at the center position that is also the so-called defensive player of the year, right? Um,
Players also rated him the most overrated player in the NBA. So
I
which,
gotta jump in here real quick. The Knicks have Mitchell Robinson.
well, but he's also injury prone, right? And
Correct, but you know
and-
he with just as a heads up, as great as Hartenstein was, the Knicks defense was 5 points better, as in like allowed 5 points less per game with Mitchell Robinson on the court than Hartenstein. They had almost their highest ratings were all when he was in the lineup. He can literally guard any center one-on-one, whether it was Jokic. Go back to the game they played against Wemby and look at what he did to Wemby that first time they played. Go look at what he did to Jokic. Go look at what he did to Embiid. He's one of the few guys that has the muscle and length to match up with almost anyone. Yes, however, though, he is injury prone. So
are you telling me, is Zico saying that Rudy Gobert would not help this team?
no, I didn't say that. Rudy Gobert makes $41 million to trade for Rudy Gobert. You're going to have to trade Randy and Mitchell Robinson, and that I don't agree with.
you know, so again, you know, you get, depending on the perspective you either get GM Zico or you get podcast talk Zico, right? So that was kind of a passive aggressive way to get Zico all worked up on this conversation, since Mike, you've been doing all the talking. But you're right, Zico, they do have Mitchell Robinson, and to me, I'm a fan, and his impact on the team and on the game is obviously significant. But if he can stay healthy, then yes, they just need a serviceable backup big man to have the depth at that position, right? I know the NBA game is different now. There's a lot of small ball, and they have a couple players that can, play small ball at some point, but they still need to have a starting five and a backup. If they can do that, then yes, I think they're going to be a problem. But to counter what Mike said here about their coach and the so-called rumors that he overworks his players, we know it's true. It's been talked about often and often. And what you have to keep in mind is these Nova Knicks, these are also guys that have played 4 years of college for the most part. And so, and they've been in the league, 4 to 5 years, at least all of them at this point of their career. So we're talking about, that will their bodies sustain the Thibodeau system to have the run that we're expecting the Knicks to have with such a trade?
And before Zico goes, I would say yes, just because they have a plethora of guys to run out there. They could switch it up. They can run different lineups. They have depth now, right?
Yeah, I think they had depth last year. I just didn't like some of the depth. Alec Burks and Bogdanovich, I don't think that they're like really Thibodeau guys. They get worn out a little easier. Maybe some of that's age, but when you look at, like, again, that perimeter length of OG, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and then you put your scores of Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson there, and then you have the length of Mitchell Robinson, and even like Precious Achiuwa, who's been the small ball center, and you could kind of mix up different lineups and whoever else they get at that point. I think they have enough that they won't wear down their players. I think that's the plan, like that they had in the summer. By the time playoffs came, yeah, those guys were worn out. Julius Randle obviously missed most of the year due to that shoulder injury and was forced into surgery. But I think that team is like literally primed to avoid the Thibodeau situations now. Like, where Thibodeau always had like 5 or 6 guys and wore them ragged, whereas now he's got 9 or 10 deep. I don't think he's going to wear anyone ragged at this point, because he's going to have the sub that could come in and, he doesn't have to play OG 40 minutes. He doesn't have to play Randall 40 minutes. He could play them all down to 32 minutes and save their legs. By the time playoffs comes, that team's ready to roll. And I think that's the plan.
Yeah, and I think that'll be determined by how they're doing in the season, right? If if they've got close games, those minutes might change a little bit, and you might get those 40-minute games, but I think overall over the course of the season, he'll spread it out well.
Moving on, I want to stick to the East because I think there's a legitimate title contender in the East right now that is very much worth talking about. I wasn't necessarily surprised in any way, shape, or form that, Paul George left the Clippers and went to the Philadelphia 76ers. He definitely wanted the money. He got the money, but he went to a situation that's really ideal for him. I think he's going to be great on that team. Him, Embiid, and Maxey form a real formidable trio that's going to be able to compete. And the question is that trio good enough to beat the Celtics and the Knicks? If Embiid is healthy, honestly, then yeah, I think they actually could. But the other question will be, do they have the depth to really actually pull it off? So what do you guys think about this group now?
So is this the biggest move of the offseason? Do we think Paul George is the biggest fish?
That's a good
mean,
question. Omar, what do you think?
Yeah.
Omar,
Play that Jeopardy theme.
I'm not sure if
playing
that's
solitaire.
No, shit, I wish. Right? I wanna play that solitaire that gives you free money too, right? When you win. Right now I think it is. I think it is, but Zeke mentioned in our chats, right? Some of these sign and trade deals are, free agency sign and trade deals could play a big factor. That could be a bigger, a bigger splash. But right now, I would probably say yes, he is. He is probably the biggest signing of the offseason at this point. But
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of movement, especially with some of the stuff that we're seeing here. There could be potential for other stuff.
What do you think that does for Philly as a team? I mean, if you look at their track record, right? Realistically, they shouldn't have been a play-in team last year. But Embiid goes down, they have no one to carry the ship. If Embiid goes down, does Paul George get him into the playoffs without doing a play-in? Is he that good in the East? Does this put them, in your opinion, above the Knicks, above the Celtics?
Well, that's a good point there. I'll say that Paul George is an upgrade over Tobias Harris, even though Tobias Harris has been, an overpaid, role player here, and I'm not knocking him for getting his money, but he's been signed for max contracts as expected to be a 1-2 guy. I think Paul George is definitely an upgrade over that. So yes, I can see him, picking up the slack when Embiid goes down.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get many arguments that Paul George is better than.
Well, but that's what I make that I made that statement here just so that this way, you now have that because you have now that third superstar on that team, right? And Maxey in today's NBA is now becoming a superstar with his stat line and his ability to score. So now you're giving him three top scorers in the league. And so we know that we've talked about this on previous episodes. It takes two to win an NBA championship, right? With all the other things falling into place, but having three just increase your odds.
But you got to have the right three, and they got to fit together. That's one thing I'll say about.
But you got a big a wing and a point guard.
I was going to say, I think they have. I think Paul George is. I don't want to say underappreciated or undervalued, but he fits seamlessly into a lot of teams. The way he plays, he's for the most part an unselfish player. He can fit a role. He plays offense and defense. Very good two-way player. I think Paul George is the type of guy that you can put on literally any team in the NBA right now as constructed, and he makes them better. He can play 2 through 4, although you wouldn't want him at a 4 as a starter, but he could if he needed to. So you really put him at any 2 or 3 on almost any team in the league, probably any team in the league, and he makes them better. So I think Paul George is a huge pickup. I think he helped the 76ers a bunch. But at the same time, I don't think it's enough because I don't think they have the rest of the roster filled out to compete with Boston or the Knicks currently.
So I don't think they're done. There's multiple other deals that they're working on, but as of right now, you're looking at a starting lineup of something like Embiid, Paul George, Kelly Oubre, Tyrese Maxey, and Eric Gordon, who they just signed away from the Phoenix Suns. And you're going to have Andre Drummond and Kyle Lowry coming off the bench. Again, I don't think they're done there. I know they're working a couple of other deals. I think they're also looking at potential starting power forwards, so Paul George doesn't have to play the 4. It's those 7 alone is actually pretty solid roster, honestly.
So before you get too far, because you guys are big Laker fans, so I'm sure you've seen this played out, but Andre Drummond and Kyle Lowry on the backsides of their career.
Right.
Granted, they're coming off the bench. How has that worked for other teams in the past? Whether it be Carmelo Anthony coming off the bench or an old Steve Nash or Karl Malone or
I
Gary
don't think
Payton
Andre Drummond
or
and Kyle Lowry were superstars ever. I think they were always role players wherever they
Andre
went.
Drummond, yeah. Kyle Lowry
Superstars.
was a multiple-time All-Star.
Superstar. Like Carmelo Anthony was a superstar. Kyle
Yeah,
Lowry was not
okay.
a superstar, is what I'm saying. Like the issue with a superstar is ego. Kyle Lowry doesn't have an ego. He's been coming off the bench for multiple years. He was coming off the bench when he's in Toronto, and he's like the golden child of the Toronto Raptors. So I don't think there's going to be an issue there. I think those guys know their role. And Drummond used to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. He was Embiid's backup in the past. He came back, signed with the team again because he wants to be his backup. He's there for when Embiid needs to rest and Embiid's taking nights off or Embiid's hurt. So, yeah, I think the team has a lot of potential. They're probably going to end up being like that dark horse. I think for them, the issue becomes health. If Eric Gordon, who's older, and Embiid is hurt, and Andre Drummond is hurt, and Kyle Lowry just has that age and can't get up and go one night, it could be the difference for them in a playoff series. So I have to see who else they fill out the roster with because they're not done yet. But I think they'll be a threat, that's for sure. I think they definitely move it up to number 3.
How much longer does Embiid have on his contract?
Right now, I think it's 3 years, but I'm going to confirm that.
I'll
It's
find out for you.
obvious.
But
Obviously.
Zico, you mentioned some of these key players here that could make a difference for Philly here that are unrestricted free agents with hopes, that they do, resign here. And I think that's going to play a factor. Some of these unrestricted free agents that Philly has are coming back. Embiid is under contract until 2026, 27, Mike. So he has 2 more years with a player option for a third.
Yeah.
But going back to like what we talked about, obviously the Sixers roster, they lost Mo Bamba, they lost Nicholas Batum, they lost Tobias Harris, as we talked about, they lost Anthony Melton.
Yeah.
Mo Bamba.
What did I say?
Mo Bamba. You said Mo Bamba, but I don't know why you said Mo Bamba. That's not a big loss.
Well, we're just talking about. I'm just looking at their roster
In general. Okay.
I'm just in general because again, Cameron Payne got arrested, right? So he's gone.
Still on the team, but
But he got arrested. But again, you're looking at Kyle Lowry, KJ Martin, Buddy Hield.
Buddy Hield is actually leaving. There's a reported.
But that's what I'm saying.
From
So they have a lot of unrestricted free agents that could potentially be gone. And yes, you're possibly, like, to answer your question, Mike, Philly might be a shell of themselves, even with some of the people returning with Paul George, that if they don't get smart with how they're going to fill out that roster, yes, having Paul George could just be a good run in the East, and that's about it. A playoff team at best.
There's a player I want to move on to. that I'm a little disappointed did not sign with the Philadelphia 76ers. He left for money, and he went to a situation that kind of left me dumbfounded, and that is KCP, Kentavious Caldwell Pope, who left to play with the Orlando Magic for a $60 million contract. He also could have, and I know Philly was after him, he could have signed with Philadelphia, and I think he would have been perfect with this group. Why he chose to go to Orlando is kind of just blowing my mind. I love the Magic. I think they're an up and coming team. Banchero is one of my favorite young guys, but
We'll do in my opinion. Okay. KCP has a ring, right?
right,
2 rings, right?
right.
So he's already got his championships. Orlando was a team in the East that hosted a playoff series, right? So he's going to a competitive team. He's got rings. He's got the most amount of money he's gotten out of a salary. So he's going to a team that's young. He can spread the floor. He can still do what he does. He can be competitive. He can make the playoffs. And do I think he's going to win a ring in Orlando? No chance. Do I think they got better with him? Obviously. Will they make some more moves now? Maybe. But it's the East. The East is it's 3 teams, and that's dependent on what Milwaukee does. Right now, it's really 2, right? Because of all the things we just said about Philly, I don't think Philly is in that yet. Now, if they make more moves, sure, but if you're KCP, you have nothing left to prove. Why are you going to take a pay cut to go play in Philly to fall short?
So, I think KCP, some of it, yeah, he took the money, have a bag to retire with, but I think he gambled on himself a little too much. I think he's hoping, hey, I will sign with Orlando. Second I see it's going nowhere, I'll request a trade. And he thinks, a contender will jump in and trade for him. Problem is now he's making $20 million a year, and he is 34, 35 this year. I don't see any team trading for him unless it's like the last year of his deal where they're dumping salary type of a situation. So he's kind of stuck there now. And again, I like the Magic. I think they have a bright future, but it didn't really make sense. They have so many guards. Like who are they starting now with KCP there? Like they've been starting. What's his name?
Do they really have a bright future, or is Banchero leaving like all of the other good Orlando Magic players?
Banchero, future Laker. Yes, we got to keep in mind.
Okay.
Every number 1 pick from the Orlando Magic becomes a future Laker. We're hoping Laker fans are begging for anything. But yeah, no, seriously.
That's the key word. We're begging for everything now.
Begging, literally begging for anything. Please, God, please, God, just get us out of this misery. Just give us something young.
We're not in the West. We're not going to go in too deep, but I think you guys got your guy, right?
No.
Okay, we're not gonna go there yet right now, Mike. Yeah. But let's go back to Orlando, and I do want to chime in on the KCP, signing with Orlando over Philly, right?
Again, those are the only 2 options.
Those are the teams that heavily recruiting him.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't think a player like KCP didn't have more than 1 team, right? But then again, just focusing on the 2 teams that were heavily recruiting him or making a pitch to him. Obviously, like Zico mentioned, he's at a point where KCP with the Lakers took a pay cut, right, in hopes of winning a championship, and that was a whole clutch deal here. But at the end of the day, he went with the more money. But there's also a factor here. Orlando's really young, and he can provide him with that veteran presence and that leadership. And so there's probably more to his role that he felt where he would have a bigger voice, and that could play a factor versus playing 4th fiddle to the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with what KCP did. I think for all the reasons I said, he made his decision that way. I know we're not in the West, but is Denver doing anything? Why'd they just let him go?
They couldn't afford him. this is one of those situations that starts happening.
It's all
with
catching up
max
to 'em.
contract. Yeah,
Yeah,
it starts
okay.
catching up to you. It's gonna catch up to the Celtics pretty quick
Yeah,
next summer. It's going to catch up to the Knicks next summer. You know, like these teams that do this, they gamble a little bit because they set up a window. This is one of those things that, like the OG contract we were talking about last week, I think he took too much. I think he would have been fine taking 35 million. He wanted more. You know, that's one of those things where like that starts happening with teams that like starts dismantling the teams. You know, actually LeBron right now, he just signed his extension and he took less. He took $1 million less a year. Instead of
but
taking
but
52, he took 51.
he
And
also can opt out and restructure his contract.
correct. But when you start doing that, it's like now you're limiting the team to be able to make a legitimate signing to compete. You lose players that way. It starts building, it's one of those things that could actually be a chemistry breaker for teams. You know, like there might be a guy on that, like example being on Jalen Brunson. You know, he's going to be getting the max contract, and here he is this last year. OG's going to be making $17 million more than him this year. You know, OG's going to be making 15 million more than Julius Randle. Like sometimes those things, and then OG being the kind of person he's hurt a lot. Imagine if he misses half the season and these two guys are, you know, breaking their backs all season long, and this guy's getting paid 42 and they're getting paid 27. So stuff like that sometimes can throw a wrench in everything. But you got to pay them. This is the reality of the NBA, and that's what the checks and balances end up happening for all these teams. You know, again, I think the Celtics and Knicks are going to be hit with it next year. So this is their window. Win now, or you're going to lose out on your future. I think the Nuggets are seeing that right now. So they paid Eric Gordon, they paid Michael Porter Jr., they paid Jokic, they have to pay Murray right now. You don't have anything else to work with.
And isn't there a rumor right now where Michael Porter Jr. is probably on the move here?
Correct.
So now we're talking about two potential, you know, key contributors to the Denver's, you know, championship runs that are not going to be there. The question is, what's Denver going to do to fill those spots?
Yeah.
But
Before we jump to the West, there's a couple more trades, signings I want to talk about in the East. One more trade, one more signing.
one,
One more guy who also chased the money. Jonas Valanciunas went to the Washington Wizards, 3-year, $30 million year.
that's crazy because the Wizards suck.
Well, yes, the Wizards suck, but they do have they're in a better situation drafting Alex Sarr. Actually, if you go back and listen to the podcast that we had when we talked about rookies, when we were talking about Bilal Koulibaly, you know, we looked at him as a potential OG Anunoby type of player in the future, the long defensive player, shooting guard, small forward that they have. And I said on that podcast, like, if they were able to draft Alex Sarr and you're building with these two French kids, you know, you have something you could work with. So Valanciunas, who's a foreigner himself, probably looked at those two kids, sees their future, got his money, he could play next to them. Probably wasn't going to win a championship with the Lakers, even if he had come to the Lakers, which Clay probably saw the exact same situation, chose not to do it. So he went to a team, got his money, and
Well,
sorry guys, fireworks there.
no, they're happening here too. But
Yeah.
Off topic, but on topic. Shout out to Adam Silver, who really created parity in the NBA. Right? I mean, all of these teams can't afford to keep their teams, and now people are changing teams and creating new opportunities for new teams to get better. What is it? The last 8 seasons, they've had 8 different champions.
Yeah, I think that's going to continue.
Yeah.
But part of that, Mike, we talked about this. I just don't think, like, you look at the last like runs of guys winning back to back or going to finals after finals. It's been LeBron and Steph, and then it was Kobe and Tim Duncan, like Jordan before that, even Karl Malone to extent like getting there, right? There's no one I feel that is that good right now that you could say like, oh man, they're going to be doing every year after year. Like pencil them in, they're probably going to be in there. Like, who do you see in the NBA? Like, there are great players. I just don't feel like there are, and Wemby's the exception, but he's just not there yet. I feel like Wemby's going to be that guy. There's no one there right now that I just feel like is that level of good to
Yeah,
replace those guys and do it.
where a team's above and beyond everybody else.
Right. And even like, see, and that's the management structure of things. Like, this is like where whenever I build a team, like I want that perimeter threat, I want that post threat. If you get the 1 and 2 and you make it work and you do simple contracts around them, you're capable of winning. The Lakers had a manageable salary when they had Powell and Kobe. They were able to sign free agents every summer. They always had their mid-level exception available to bring in a new guy. They didn't overpay their role players. They made everything work. Now you're looking at, again, Eric Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., they're making over $100 million. And you have 2 max players in Jokic and Murray. You can't afford the 5th guy. And like, that's the difference in today's NBA, I feel like. Like, teams are building with like 4, building around that, hopefully the 5th, but they can never keep the 5th. So
We cut you off. Who's the other East team?
who's the other East team? The other East team I want to talk about is actually the Atlanta Hawks, who had the first pick. They actually traded DeJounte Murray. They traded him to the Pelicans. They got Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., and some draft picks back for the trade. Looks like Atlanta is rebuilding. I will not be surprised to see Atlanta trade Trae Young at this point.
You think so? You after moving Murray, you think that wasn't a decision to hopefully keep Trae there?
I said I wouldn't be surprised if they move him. It's tough. Like, the number 1 pick that they had, Zachary he's a good player. I don't feel like he's a star player. And you have Trae Young, who adamantly wants to win, who's been frustrated, losing, and has been vocal about it. I think for that team, the best option would be to continue to rebuild and get a bunch of draft picks back and move them. That's my personal opinion. And I'm pretty sure Trae probably feels the exact same way, unless the team goes out and trades for another star of some kind. But I don't think they're capable of doing that. So I would not be surprised if Trae gets traded by this deadline.
I'm interested to see if that actually happens, because if you trade Trae, then you basically are saying Atlanta's done. They're back to a bottom feeder team. You know what I'm saying? Potential lottery pick teams. And yeah, it says
Atlanta that way.
It says I need to stand up, right?
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see if that actually happens.
Would it not be better for that team to basically do that and be number 1, number 2 pick again and go for next year's draft, where they're going to have Cooper Flag and all these other kids come out next year who are legitimate star capable?
Yeah, but then again, you still got to build around those lottery picks, right? And so the thing is yes, you might, if you're Atlanta, let's say you do make that and you're gambling off the season in hopes of getting Cooper Flag, in which we all know Cooper Flag is right now considered the projected first round, the first overall pick next year, and his ability to be a probably franchise, player and game changer. It's a huge gamble. Is it worth it? Probably, right? And so is Atlanta in that position? I don't know. With the disparity that Mike talked about Adam Silver creating in the NBA, there's a lot of wealth being spread around, and you're no longer like it was back in the day where you're just hoping, you're taking.
So it's pretty safe to say you guys are both big NBA conspiracy guys, right?
Yeah.
What makes you think that Atlanta has a chance to get Cooper Flag, who I don't pay attention to anything as far as basketball outside of the NBA, and I know the guy's name?
Yeah, I don't necessarily say they're going to get Cooper Flag. I think next year's draft is, I think next year's draft is going to be much better than this year's draft. And even if they don't get Cooper Flag, I think there's going to be guys available that would be much better than the number 1 pick they got this year. I feel like the 5th pick.
Will they be much better than Trae Young?
No, but if Trae Young comes out and demands a trade, then what do you do?
I trade Trae Young. I'm not that big on Trae Young.
This is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think Trae Young is the superstar player that could change the franchise anyway. And if he comes out and he demands a trade, like you get back whatever assets you can and you start retooling. And honestly, I think the 5th pick in next year's draft is better than the 1st pick they got this year. That's how much better I think next year's draft is compared to this year's. So
And that could be, and I'm not going to pretend to know about next year's draft. But I will say that Trae Young is not high on my list of point guards or guards.
no, but you put Trae Young in a situation where you have other stars like to build with, like you might have a chance to, you put him next to stars where like you might have a chance to win with. He might have a better chance to win than he does with the Atlanta Hawks. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah.
Sure, he can come off the bench for the Knicks and have a better chance. I mean, it's not.
I honestly,
not
the
starting
Knicks are going to trade for him. I think the team that probably jump at the trade the most is the Lakers. The
Yeah,
Lakers
and
would
I
jump
would
at
rather
that.
have D'Lo than him. And we already know how I feel about D'Lo. So
Omar, would you rather have Trae Young or D'Angelo Russell?
Trae Young.
Yeah, I'd rather have Trae Young than D'Angelo Russell too. I just feel like regardless of what, how much smaller Trae Young is, I think that Trae Young does more on the court than D'Angelo Russell ever has. So,
Well,
let's
since we're in the business of making money with the Lakers nowadays, Trae Young is going to sell seats more than D'Angelo Russell, even with LeBron out.
yeah.
that Trae Young isn't selling additional tickets. The Lakers are
Oh,
sold
he
out.
is.
The Lakers
He
are
is.
sold out. That's
Well,
let's
no.
let's move
He's
on to
gonna
the
sell more
West.
jerseys than him.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
What's in the West? Who right now, with what's happening, not more moves to be made, who right now is your number one in the West?
Put the West number one aside. There's something that we need to talk about that I'm angry about because we just talked about Paul George. Mike, you and I were on the Clipper bandwagon, which is hard for me to say as a Laker. We thought that team was going to the finals.
Well,
And they just let
Kawhi Leonard didn't
George
play.
walk. I know, but they just let Paul George walk, and their replacements for him were Nicholas Batum,
Mhm.
Derek, what was his name?
Derek Jones Jr.
Derek Jones Jr. and Mo Bamba.
And maybe, and I said we can't go into it, but maybe DeMar DeRozan.
No, I don't think they're going to be able to sign DeMar DeRozan unless they trade for him. They're actually not able to sign DeMar DeRozan right now.
Well, they're shopping Westbrook, right?
Right, but
even if I already said
Westbrook
how I
makes
feel
$3 million.
about Paul George. I think Paul George is plug and play on almost every team. If you were asking me, I would have kept Paul George over James Harden every day of the week. A lot of people would say they would keep Paul George over Kawhi Leonard, just because he plays and he's available. While that is a big part of, having a player who's available to play, I think it's crazy to even think that he would be better than Kawhi Leonard. I think Kawhi Leonard is coming back. I think he will be healthy. I think he will put on a good run, and I think he will be a leader of a team. Those guys you mentioned, definitely not replacements for Paul George.
No.
No,
And we also lost Mason Plumlee as well, which is depth at backup center.
Right.
So Mason Plumlee and Paul George for these
Right.
three. And I like Nicholas Batum a
But
lot.
I think the Clippers will make some moves. They
But
said
here's my
so.
thing. Like, I messaged something to you guys
Yes,
regarding
you
the
did.
situation,
Yes, you did.
and like I can't give specific details. However, a little birdie told me that is close to the Clippers situation right now that there was some drama behind this. In particular, if you remember, there was a report that came out where James Harden did not want to sign his deal until he knew what was going on with Paul George. When Paul George had announced, when Paul George had announced that he is gone, James Harden signed his deal immediately. And he even sign a big deal. It was just like a smaller contract. It wasn't max deal or anything like that. However, he immediately signed his contract. The little birdie told me that this last season, after James Harden was traded to the Clippers, there was multiple altercations between James Harden and Paul George. And the franchise actually valued James Harden more than Paul George. And Paul George said it's either him or me. The franchise valued Harden more. Paul George was out.
Question on the franchise. Is that the franchise or is that specific player?
That's management. That's
Okay.
management's
Okay,
choice.
so you don't think it was Kawhi Leonard?
No, but that's like, this is like where I'm a little tense about this, because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are the really close friends on this team. They're the two guys that were closest. They're the two guys that started this. So if Kawhi is your bread and butter and you just let his best friend on the team leave, and also reports that you want to trade Westbrook now, who was also boys with Kawhi and, Paul George. Something's kind of like, this is like one of those, like, I think management fumbled. And I think due to this, and this is where I think you're going to like this, Mike, Kawhi's gone, like the second he gets a chance to, and I would not be surprised to see him go over to the Spurs.
No way he goes back to the Spurs. They
I think
messed
he's
that up
gonna
so
go
bad.
back.
No chance.
I think
He would
gonna
have
go
to
back
change. He would have
Spurs.
to get rid of his uncle. He would have. There's no chance.
I think he's going to go back to the Spurs.
No way.
You think
I'm
Kawhi
calling
going
it.
back to the Spurs?
No
I think
way.
he's going to go back to the Spurs, Mike.
There's no way.
Mike,
I don't-
regardless of what
I don't
happened,
agree with
regardless
you,
of what
Peter.
happened, think about the last time the Clippers played the Spurs and the fans were booing. What did Greg Popovich do?
It
He
doesn't matter
literally
what.
took the mic
doesn't
and
matter how
yelled at
Greg-
his fans not do stuff like this.
But it doesn't matter what Greg Popovich thinks. The way that Kawhi Leonard and his uncle went about and gutted where the Spurs were as a team, there's no chance he's going back there. The
I'm
way
calling
they mishandled that and fumbled that, he just can't.
everyone makes mistakes.
I would love it. I like Kawhi Leonard. I think Kawhi
I
Leonard
love
in
Kawhi
San
Leonard. I
Antonio would
would
be
love to see him
fantastic.
with Wemby. I would
With
love to
Wemby
see him
and
with
Chris
Wemby.
Paul, a big move in the offseason, I think, getting Chris Paul at a lower contract. I say what you will about Chris Paul. I think he's a good point guard and he'll help. We all agree that the Spurs are probably still a few years away from reaching Wemby's stride. So I think Chris Paul can help him get to that.
In
But
2 years, they're gonna be signing Rudy Gobert and Kawhi Leonard. I'm calling it.
okay, well,
Do you even think Kawhi going to San Antonio outside of maybe a retirement run? I know he's younger, but we know his injuries over the years.
Kawhi Leonard makes them better. If that's what you're going to ask, don't even ask it. Kawhi Leonard makes them immediately a
Next to
championship
Wemby?
contending team.
Next to Wemby?
Instantly.
Going into, like, his
But you guys-
prime at that point.
Okay, you guys are also talking to somebody that is a Kawhi fan here, but at the end of the day, is how much better are we talking about?
Instantly championship contender.
So Kawhi with the current team assembled right now, instantly championship contender.
Yes.
Oh, that's outrageous.
Maybe
Okay.
not championship contender, but
I-
like
I-
actually like maybe
And you talk about work
top
conspiracy
four-
theories,
top
bro.
four contender, then yeah, I would say that. I won't say championship contender because I don't think that Wemby's mature enough to go out and like beat Jokic on his own or beat Doncic.
But he doesn't
on his
have.
own.
But he doesn't have to anymore. He doesn't have to beat those guys anymore. You have Kawhi Leonard, an
I
MVP,
understand
the
that,
Finals
but
MVP, a
Kawhi,
guy who's
there's
done it,
two
a guy who's
guys.
beat.
There's two
a guy
guys
who
Kawhi
has
could not
beat.
beat, Mike. There's two
But-
guys
but-
Kawhi cannot beat.
Again, but now he has Wemby to help him.
But I think Wemby's still like 2 years away from being able to do that. That's all I'm saying.
I think
that's all
the
I'm saying.
guys that Kawhi would struggle with, Wemby can help, and the guys that Wemby would help with, Kawhi would help. I think that immediately catapults them into, and again, we've talked about disparity in the NBA and how it's built. Being a championship contending team in the West, we literally said none of us would be shocked if any of the teams other than the Pelicans. That's 10 teams. We cut it down to 9 that we wouldn't be shocked if they made the finals. So they're all championship contending teams. So you're telling me that Kawhi Leonard going to the Spurs doesn't make them better than the Lakers right now?
I didn't
Doesn't
say
make them
that.
better.
Mike.
No,
I
I'm
think
asking
they would
Omar.
be-
I'm asking
No,
Omar.
no, but that's not what we said.
That's
You
what I'm
said-
saying. By
you said
championship
title
contending.
contender.
You
That's a
said
title contending team. If you're in the finals, you're a title contending team.
I don't think they'd get to the finals because I don't think they could get past Luka or Doncic yet. Like, I just don't think Wemby's there yet. I love Wemby, Mike. I'm like on.
But you don't need to, because Minnesota will take care of one of them, right? According to what we did, Minnesota would take care of
And
one
they
of them.
wouldn't be able to beat the other one. I don't know if they could beat Minnesota yet either.
I mean,
I don't think they could beat those
Just-
three. I just don't think that they're like. I think Wemby needs 2 years, Mike, before he's there.
just
Yeah, I
like
know
none
you-
of us
I know
picked,
you're
none of
so-
us picked
right.
Dallas.
You're
None
so-
of us picked Dallas.
I did. I went back and listened to it. I told you they're the dark horse, and
You
you
said, okay,
you
okay.
berated me.
I
Actually, it
didn't
was me and
well,
Kyle
no.
Kinsel. Me and Kyle Kinsel both said Dallas is legit. They could
And
get
I,
there.
I
You
did
were
not berate you.
completely
I
against
said
it.
they're not there yet, and I said they're going to lose
No,
to the
you were
Clippers.
completely
I
against
said they
it.
were going to lose to the Clippers.
You guys, your exact word is that's crazy talk. That's
Yeah,
literally what you said to me and Kyle.
And
well,
Mike,
they didn't belong in the
you saying
finals. We
Kawhi,
saw
and
what
you
happened.
saying, and you saying Kawhi turned San Antonio into a championship contending team is crazy talk.
No, actually, I know what it is. Like, see, like I just got Mike so excited, like at the
No, because
thought.
he's not going.
Like,
There's no chance he goes to the Spurs.
I think he's going to the Spurs, man.
Well, but that's crazy. That's like I'm not even going to say it because we'll just
Like
start a whole nother trend.
way to end
No chance.
Popovich's like career, like bringing Kawhi
No.
back, like mending that
chance.
fence, like having Chris Paul at the edge of his like deathbed at that point, and Rudy Gobert coming to the team, and like the
Guys.
team would legitimately be a title contender.
Listen, everybody like and subscribe. Okay, now's your chance to do it because they're talking nonsense.
We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Okay.
There's no chance that happens. But
Okay.
I want to talk about the team in the West who I think has made the best move so far is OKC.
Absolutely.
I think OKC was already a title contending team, Omar. And I think that the people they've traded away to add and the people that they've added boost them even more than anyone else has done in the West. Do I think they're ready to go win a championship? No, I still think they're too young. I still think they have to reach the next level and get there and lose. But
calling OKC versus the Knicks in the finals this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's your response. That's crazy talk. Every time I say one of these comments, it's crazy talk. And then I'm like almost right with all of them.
Almost doesn't count. I called Boston. Boston will be back there again.
I called Dallas, and Dallas got there.
And lost to Boston. They didn't even belong on the same court.
But that's not true because again, Boston had like everyone was injured in the East. That's a different situation. It's like an asterisk.
We're not
It's
putting
like an
asterisks on anything, okay?
Absolutely.
It's not. No, you can't. There's no asterisks, guys.
Yes, there is.
Boston has more championships than the Lakers. Okay, you have more in-season tournaments. They have more championships. Let's
Okay.
move
Well,
on.
I mean, look, I'm a Laker fan, and I even put an asterisk on the bubble title.
And that's crazy. There's no asterisks, guys.
There's an asterisk there, just like I put an asterisk on a shortened NBA season title.
Stop it. Don't.
Oh, you got upset there. You know where I was going there.
You already put one on the Lakers. What difference does it make? There's no asterisks.
Well, one put an asterisk on Tim Duncan and one put an asterisk on LeBron. I didn't put an asterisk on Kobe whatsoever.
Doesn't even matter.
Zico, let him live tonight. Let him live tonight.
Never.
This doesn't listen. None of that changes anything. You're not going to go back to every shortened season and put asterisks because then you're going to go back and say, oh, every team that got out of the first round in a best of 5 series doesn't count because they didn't play best of 7. No, you're going to, they all get asterisks now because there was no play-in tournament to get into the.
That's a different situation. That was a rule change. That's a rule change versus a circumstantial.
And both of them and the circumstantial led to rule changes for that season. It's crazy.
It's crazy talk, right?
That's crazy talk.
In terms of OKC, I love what they did. They knew they were going to have to pay Giddey as well. You have to keep that in mind.
Well, they didn't. They got rid of him.
I know. They knew they were going to have to pay him big money because he was on that rookie.
He was a minor inconvenience.
They basically traded him for Alex Caruso. And
hold on, Mike, you actually need to go ahead and start creating quick memes.
Yeah, I know. Giddey
with all these little subliminal messages and phrases and statements you make about Giddey, and I really think you need to trademark these, and we can put them on shirts and sell them with the podcast.
You got to get Giddey to agree.
What you mean? Because you're just making comments that only
we got to have his picture, don't we?
Yeah, his OKC jersey doesn't
matter. A lot
matter
of people
anymore.
put pictures on shirts.
No, hold on, but you can
I
put
guess
his
that's
OKC.
true, but
you can put his OKC in front of his jersey now since he's no longer there and everybody knows what it is.
I'm sure he'd want a piece of the pie anyways.
Don't worry about that part. We got lawyers to cover you for that, Mike.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, I love what they did with the Caruso trade. They basically took back less money down the line
for a better player.
for a better player for sure, and especially a better fit, I think, for this group. And signing Hartenstein they overpaid big time, to be honest with you. Hartenstein to make $30 million a year is just nuts. It's crazy talk, right, Mike?
But yeah, but you see this over and over. I mean, we saw it with, and you guys know because you paid Luol Deng too much. People have paid Timothy Mozgov too much. It happens every time they have new deals come through, and they have to get the salary cap up, and people get overpaid that shouldn't get paid. This
No,
is
I agree
maybe
with
that
that.
one.
It was what they had to pay to get him, and I think he's worth having him on the team. I think his chemistry is going to fit in really well. They're just like they did with the Knicks. He can move Chet down to the 4, which I think is the biggest benefactor for this trade, for this signing. So I'm all for it. I'm happy for him. This team's going to be legit. I think they're going to go to the NBA Finals this year. We're going to have a different team there from the West again, which is going to lead me into the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas Mavericks also made a big trade. They signed and traded for Klay Thompson. It's kind of one of those like really cool trades, but at the same time, you're kind of feeling bummed about it because you just broke up the Splash Brothers, which has been iconic for the Warriors for so long. What do you guys think of this trade? Because I like it, but I don't think it actually puts Dallas ahead, moving forward.
So it depends which Klay you're getting, right? And if you're going off of history, coming off of the injuries and seeing how he played, if you're getting the Klay Thompson of now, it's not helping them, right? Yeah, I don't see any way where this makes them a much better or puts them further along than they already were. He steps lower on defense, so he's not guarding and locking down everybody. I think that's probably their biggest weakness as far as guards go, with Luka and Kyrie really not great defenders, right? So you're not getting a guy who can go in and lock down their best player like Klay used to be. You're also not going and getting the 40% 3-point shooter that he was. So it's not there. But if you're getting the Klay that maybe he's got another offseason behind him, maybe his leg starts to feel a little better, maybe he starts to get a little bit of that athleticism back, and he starts shooting the ball again, and you get Klay of 3-4 years ago, then all of a sudden they got a lot better, right? Because then you've got a guy that can go guard lockdown player. You can throw him on Anthony Edwards, and instead of just letting Anthony Edwards run past people, you can go do these things that they couldn't before. So if you get that guy, that helps him a ton. But I don't think that guy's there anymore. And he's not going to be more open on this team than he was playing next to Steph. He'll be just as open. So I don't think that he's going to be seeing different shots. Still a catch and shoot guy. That's great. That'll help Luka. It'll give him somebody to dish off to at the last minute, give Kyrie something offensively. So if he knocks down the shots, then all of a sudden, great. They're much better. But if you get Klay from this season, I don't think it's putting them above where they already were.
So 2 things I want to point out. One thing I want to point out, one thing I want to ask. One, I think the shots will be different for Klay. Because one of the issues I think that Klay was having with OKC with the Golden State Warriors was the team was still playing really fast pace. That way they can keep Steph moving in the offense to have teams chasing and to get him open. Steph's one of the hardest guys to guard simply because of that. He's always moving. And with the way that offense is working, and worked in the past, Klay was the other guy that was moving to kind of shuffle the defense to basically pick your poison. I think Klay can't keep up with that pace anymore. If you actually watch the games, I feel like Klay was not 1, but 2 or 3 steps behind. The difference with this Dallas team is Jokic is slow. Jokic plays half-court basketball. I think the shots Luka. I'm sorry. Luka's slow. He plays half-court basketball.
I mean, Joker's slow too. But...
Right. Yeah. Both. All us Europeans are. But I think Clay is going to have a lot more of those just standing, set, catch, and shoot 3-pointers from the corner. And I think that might be a little easier for him. So in that aspect, I think he's going to be a better fit. But where I question it is he a starter on this team? Is he coming off the bench? Like, where do you slot him? Because
They
they
lost.
had Derrick
They just
Jones
lost Derrick
Jr.,
Jones,
who was the
and
guy
they
that,
traded Tim Hardaway too. So
right, and
yeah,
Derrick
I
Jones
think he's
Jr.
their
was the
starting
guy
three.
right, but Derrick Jones Jr. was the guy they had starting chasing the other team's best perimeter player. And so like now I'm kind of looking at this from the standpoint of like, okay, if you just lost that and Clay has lost 1 or 2 steps and is a little slower, and he can't be the 3-and-D guy he was in the past. Like maybe you need to have your small forward starting who can do that.
Maybe they see it differently.
I
Maybe
don't know. Like I'm
maybe to
asking you
your
guys, what do
point,
you guys think?
maybe to your point, if he's standing in the corner and just not running as much on offense, he has more energy for defense and he can go guard that best guy and then sit in the corner and catch and shoot.
That's possible, Mike. And I think another thing is, yes, he's older. I know he's come off of certain injuries, but then again, we all know a lot of players in these scenarios when they get traded or they sign and trade to different organizations, they find a pep in their steps, right? And they take their off season a little differently and they prepare differently. And I wouldn't be surprised that he, does something to be able to, somewhat present himself in a similar manner of where he was a guy that was able to play defense on one end and knock down shots on the other end. And as you mentioned, Zico, I do agree that with the limited capacity, right? With the limited capacity of maybe not having, I mean, he's never really had to create his own shots, but then not having to come off of screens like he's accustomed to and running off of the, pin downs and everything and just be more of a catch and shoot guy. He might turn into this 3-and-D guy where Clay has the ability to guard, the perimeter guys and just be a catch and shoot guy. Because Dallas's offense is not, set up for guys to come off of curls and pin downs and like the Golden State Warriors offense is, so I think he's going to benefit from that for durability.
Well, the reason why I was kind of bringing this up is the Mavs did make one more signing. They actually signed Najee Marshall, who used to play for the Pelicans, to a 3-year, $27 million contract, which was the money that this was the first signing they made, by the way. They did this, and it was literally like a sign of, we are letting Derrick Jones go. And I am just like, the way they did that, it almost makes me feel like if they let Derrick Jones go, and I think Najee Marshall is going to be a better defender than Derrick Jones was, it makes me feel like they might be starting Najee Marshall in place of Derrick Jones and bringing Clay off the bench. I'm curious to see how this is going to work. I know how Jason Kidd likes having 3 defenders on the court at all times in place of or next to Luka and Kyrie. So I don't know. It's my worry is Clay goes there and he doesn't get to start or starts and then gets removed from starting lineup and it becomes like a bad situation, kind of like they had this last season with the guy they traded. What was his name? The obnoxious one that got traded to the Charlotte Hornets.
I don't remember, but you
From the
go and
Celtics. From the
you
Celtics.
look at Grant Williams.
Grant Williams. So like imagine, I just called him obnoxious. I shouldn't have done that, but yeah, I hope it's not a situation where Clay comes in and is unhappy and wants to get traded because it's not working the way he planned. He's not starting or things like that. Because I feel like once Clay came off the bench, he was upset. So
two things. If Clay's coming off the bench, then all of a sudden he's playing against a different caliber of player, right? His bench typically isn't as good as the starters, so that would help him. I don't think it's what he wants, but then 2, going back to what Omar said, that's a very good point. A lot of players, when they get let go, because that's how he's looking at this, right? Is Golden State did not want him back. It's all over the place. He called Steph.
They did,
said,
just not the price he wanted.
Right. And he told Steph, hey, don't intervene. I want them to do what they want to do. So playing with a chip on your shoulder and going into that offseason, like Omar said, that can be a big role for a lot of these guys that are at this level because there is a lot of pride. There is a lot of ego. And if Clay gets that back and he has that the drive, then could be a completely different player.
So Zico, you just made a comment here. Is like they didn't want to re-sign him for the price that he was asking for, but
They
in
offered
today's
more.
NBA climate and in today's, salaries and today's contracts being signed, I mean, was he too far off of what he was asking, you think?
No,
That's
I thought they offered him, it was like the same contract. It was like $2 million off.
I don't know, like, this was what I read, that he wasn't happy with the offer they gave him, so he wanted out. We don't know what that offer is. Like Clay's gonna say one thing, the management's gonna say another. Like at that point, it becomes like a little bit of a mess. So I don't know what was
well,
offered.
Him and
well,
Green were upset because maybe he didn't get the offer that Poole and Wiggins got for their extensions.
well,
Something like that.
I mean, and we'll call it a rumor, right? Because like Zico said, we don't know what the truth is, right? But the rumor is all he was asking for was a 2-year, 40 mil. So we're talking about 20 years, 20 million a year here. In today's climate of the NBA, salaries, I mean, is that too much for the Warriors to offer one of their key cornerstone of the franchise that helped them become a dynasty?
Apparently.
I mean,
Right. And they waived Chris Paul for nothing.
Yeah. Well, they did that. I'm gonna just point out a couple of other moves. Obviously, Chris Paul signed with the Spurs. Tobias Harris signed with the Pistons. Kyle Anderson signed with the Warriors. And the Warriors are working on a Buddy
Which-
Hield sign and trade.
Have you seen that meme with Kyle
Which-
Anderson?
I don't know if I have. I don't think you said
It's got it. No, I didn't send it. I just saw it. It's got a picture of Steph Curry and he passes it and he says, "Kyle, shoot the three." And Kyle says, "Hold on, give me a minute."
you know what?
Yeah,
It's
that was
funny.
a random signing to me because that whole pace situation doesn't make sense to me with Kyle
Oh.
Anderson.
That they're probably hoping he can be their version of Sean Livingston, right? But again,
Just a
going
slower
back,
version.
yeah. But going back to what Mike said, it's funny you mentioned that because yesterday, we were talking about Kyle Anderson and the signing. It's like, what happened to his jump shot? You know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't like that at UCLA. It wasn't like that early in his career.
San Antonio, he was nice.
What happened? I don't understand. So yes.
A few other quick ones. James Wiseman signed with the Pacers, which I actually think that might be a good situation for him. And then there was one other one that in particular I wanted to point out because it's a small move, but I think that could be a really good one. Monte Morris signed with the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns had no point guard all season last year, and it just blew my mind why they wouldn't sign one. So I know Monte Morris isn't a great point guard, but he's a good backup point guard. But I actually think that could be one of those signings that ends up being really good for the team.
Again, I'm going to mention it. We're not going to go into detail because I know we got a nice episode planned, but LeBron James did sign a max contract after saying he would take less to sign somebody else. They missed out on all the other big fish. He signed that big contract. Yeah, I know, but he officially signed it.
No, he took a pay cut, Mike. He took, instead of taking 52, he took 51.
But he didn't. He took a big contract.
I know.
I mean, what based on what Mike is pointing out here is at the end of the day, he said that he would consider a pay cut if they brought in a game changer, right? Which, in some of those games,
the Lakers whiffed.
The Lakers have been whiffing ever since LeBron has been with the Lakers, and
they did get AD. They got AD.
It's a trade, Mike. That's different.
That's a trade.
I know.
Lakers,
they could lose AD.
Lakers have been very unsuccessful.
They just lost Taurean Prince, who just signed with the Bucks as well.
That's actually should be helpful for the Bucks.
Yeah, it was a signing for them. Before we end this,
what did you say, Zico? I missed. What did you say?
Taurean Prince signed with the Bucks, which I think that was a really good signing for the Bucks.
Yeah, because that's going to be their new version of Jay Crowder, right?
Right.
But what about? I don't know how much this is going to help, but what about Chris Dunn signing with the Clippers?
I actually really like Chris Dunn. He had some bad injuries. I think he's a really good player. Great defensive player. He's kind of honestly like a Caruso type of player. He just can't stay healthy. He's constantly hurt, but he's one of those guys who's an X factor, plays defense, hits shots. He's not as good of a shooter, but he's a great slasher. It's like one of those guys where it's like, dang man, like it's like Reggie Jackson. Like if you could just stay healthy, but then you're always hurt. So
Can
And what
we
do you
say that right now, nobody besides OKC, Dallas, and then a little bit for the Spurs, the West hasn't gotten any better.
I agree with that.
Well, I'm gonna just throw something out of left field here since we talked about it on a previous episode, and I think from a veteran standpoint and a high IQ standpoint, what do you guys think about Joe Ingles signing with Minnesota?
He literally replaced Kyle Anderson, the slow, methodical ball handler slash shooter who could come off the bench and make a bunch of really good plays in a short amount of time. So come playoffs, I think he'll be valuable.
You don't think he's an upgrade on over Kyle Anderson?
No, not at this point.
Not on
He's
the defensive side.
37,
when it-
38 years
yeah.
old. Yeah, like I don't think he's an upgrade. I think he's just a really good replacement for that exact type of player that you just lost. So, but yeah, I agree. I don't think anyone got like OKC got significantly better. I don't know that Dallas necessarily got better. I'm gonna have to wait some time to see. I do think the Quentin Grimes trade could actually be a really good one for them too. I think Quentin Grimes is a really good 3-and-D player. I think he might be an upgrade. I think he's actually an upgrade over the other guy that they also traded in that trade, Josh Green. So we have to see. That one's kind of wait and see for me because they lost some length with the Derek Jones trade loss. So it's wait and see for me. I think they might end up making one more move come deadline to like replace whatever they realized they were missing. So
unanimously, we think that OKC got better and the end.
from the West, yeah, I think
Yeah.
OKC, Philadelphia, and the Knicks got better.
Yeah, not
those
the East. The
three
East
teams definitely got better. Yeah.
so far.
And obviously some teams are still left incomplete. DeMar DeRozan is still available,
Yep.
and he wants to play for more than the minimum. So he doesn't want to play for the Clippers. He doesn't want to play for the Heat. I'm curious to see where he's going to go.
And there were a lot of rumors about Damian Lillard early last year, and he's sitting happy on the Bucks. Is that going to stay?
I don't know if he's happy, but I think he's going to give it one more year just for Giannis's sake. So,
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think you guys mentioned Phoenix here. I think like you said, Monte Morris signing there is big for them because they didn't really have a point guard. One key signing that I think I'm a fan of this player, and I think it's gonna help them is Mason Plumlee signing with Phoenix. Will play a factor there. I mean, I know their starting five is Nurkic, but the thing is Mason gives them some depth there at the five position.
I think they lost Drew Eubanks, who was their backup center. I think he left to a different team. So
he went to Utah.
yeah, there you go. So
yeah, I mean, right now I think there's still free agency just opened up, right? So there's a lot of players still out there that are unsigned. So it's interesting to see how things pan out over the next few weeks.
Yep.
I would love to see DeMar DeRozan go to San Antonio again.
Well, there's
they have the money to sign them.
There's a rumor of him going to Miami.
Well, he just actually is announced he's not going there because they don't have the money to sign him outright, and they don't have the assets to trade for him. They don't want to give up the assets to trade for him. So doesn't look like that's happening.
We'll see.
Well, then
Actually, Philly or Golden State could end up being the team that actually gets him.
Got a nice off season to go. Summer league will start soon. Should be a good time. We got the Olympics. We're gonna have to talk about Olympic teams, I think.
Season's over, but there's still a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
And it might not just be things to talk about. It might be things to talk with other people about, right, Omar?
yeah, definitely. I think we're due for another guest appearance here, and we're working on a special guest, and I think that special guest is going to be very important for us to actually talk about one of the biggest news that we have in today's NBA that we strategically and purposely did not talk about on our podcast today, and that's something we talked about previously is Bronny getting drafted by the Lakers and having the father-son duo.
Oh, it was so nice not having to talk about that though.
We'll get to it. I do want to point out we're still at 101 subscribers, less than halfway to Omar running a mile, which I'm pretty sure we all want to see. So, guys, go like and subscribe.
I have a feeling that those subscribers will be coming in pretty well very soon. So
All right, I'm all for it. My end of the deal. I hope my end of the deal, Mike, you did. I'm excited to get us, when
Well,
Zico comes
sucks-
home.
What sucks
No.
is when we do get to 200, I got to put on that jersey again.
all right, guys, let's end it there. Thank you guys for tonight, and thank you everyone listening to the show.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Right.